What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. So we're live again on YouTube. Let me just post a link. I try to be able to multitask, but my multitasking of talking and live streaming. Oops. Look, see, I'm already falling apart. There we go. All right. So I hope everyone's doing well. It's almost Friday. I like this Thursday at 9 because tomorrow I am my last day before the weekend. So come join me, Bolsheviks and Wall Street. So if anybody's real interested in this topic, I try to do like a really good outline, but it's by Anthony Sutton. I think I can't find the title, but he writes a lot of good books. I like his. I read his Skull and Bones one, and I agree with most of his views. Like some of his views, I won't mention. I kind of disagree with, but this one was written, I think, like in the 80s. So, but he's real awesome, like great reporting. There's not much. I mean, he's like a gold standard of a conspiracy or alternative media writer. All right. So I will hit record so I can record for people listening on the podcast. And thanks for anybody that's watching live. My fiance is watching, so thanks to her. She's one of the few people in this room with me. And here we go. All right, record this. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. You can follow me on Twitter at Conspiracy or JC, on YouTube, Gab, all under the same thing. And I have a Patreon if you want to support the show. I also have a website, conspiracyorjustacoincidence.com. I know that's long. Sometimes I question how to spell coincidence. But yeah, so if you want to support the show or just leave a review. I'm like hearing a weird noise. But so if you can support the show, awesome. If you can't, leave a review. I get so many nice reviews. I got like 2 awesome ones last week, and I like sharing with my dad and my fiance. So they do mean a lot. And even if you have constructive criticism, I will take your constructive criticism because I know there's a lot of shows out there, and I enjoy and honored that you listen to this one. So let me share my screen for this one thing I wanted to show. All right, there we go. All righty, so let me make a little bit bigger. This is probably like the only picture that I have prepared, but this kind of sets it off for what we're going to talk about. So this topic, Wall Street and the Bolsheviks. I'm sure many of us know this by this point. You know that the Bolsheviks were funded. All things are funded by these bankers and fake elites that run our world. They create 2 sides so they can create conflict, and their end goal is the same thing. They want a monopoly. They want to have no competition. And so the example I use is you wake up in your rented Amazon pod, you get your drone delivery of an Amazon toothbrush that you also rent before you go to work, where you work at an Amazon fulfillment center. And that's what they want. That's their dream. Total surveillance. You own nothing, like the 2030 World Economic Forum commercial says. You own nothing. You'll be happy. You eat the bugs. You get your weekly allotment of meat and food. And that's how you keep a society in line. And that's what they want, right? So this, if you're listening, that's fine. If you're watching, this cartoon is drawn by a guy, Robert Miner. What it is it's a smiling Karl Marx under his arm, accepting handshakes and everything from J.P. Morgan, George Perkins, Rockefeller, other bankers. Teddy Roosevelt's also in there. So basically with this, Miner, he was a Bolshevik revolutionary. He was arrested in Russia in 1915, but Wall Street bailed him out. No worries. But yeah, so even back then, I think this cartoon was drawn in 1911. And so I say this because history, as we know, is written by the winners. And since history is written by the winners, it was known then that Wall Street was funding the Bolsheviks and all these communists and socialists, which go completely against what you think. Like capitalists, why would they fund a communist? But even back then, it knew. It's just something that we forget or we choose to, because people don't read, because people don't care. And yeah, so now you would think, no, why would Jeff Bezos support socialism? That doesn't make any sense. But after this episode, if you didn't know, you'll know for sure. So yeah, that's what that cartoon though just sets like a very good precedent for what we're going to talk about. But kind of like what I said, both international political capitalists and international socialists, they are the same team. They're all on the same team, the same goal. I just said that. Bolshevization of Wall Street. It was known in 1919 what was going on. Like I said, just doesn't get taught, because why would your history teacher in high school didn't know that? They got taught by the same college professors, that which is key, because even back then college professors were teaching they were very like socialistic, communist. And this goes back, even Woodrow Wilson, his college professor was a Skull and Bones member of like late 1800s. He was a socialist, was educated by a socialist. So Woodrow Wilson, maybe they're not like the same socialist you think today, but the actions he took were socialistic, right? 52 professors at this time and back in 1915 were on these peace committees of how to keep peace with this revolutionary group that caused millions of murders, of it, just blood piling in the streets. They wanted peace with them, right? And this episode is funny because it comes after my like relatively new belief that the monarchies in the church were specifically overthrown because that gave us the most protection. And I know, again, like some people may really struggle with that. It's like they're libertarian, which I was too at one point. No rule. It's only messed up because there's all these rules and subsidizations and that, to a sense, there are some definitely points I agree with about libertarians, and there's just too many where tax dollars are going to the wrong people, which I totally agree with. It would be better without all these, but I still believe that total right-leaning libertarian and total left-leaning communists are two wings of the same corrupt bird, right? They're just created opposition to clash, to go towards the same thing. Because in a libertarian field, how would you stop Amazon? If you have no antitrust, no government interference, Amazon would literally own the world, or Apple would own everything, or you would be living on Apple land while you understand, you get the point. So I truly am like starting to believe, I would love to debate anybody listening, about why the monarchies and a church backed like a good monarchy. Well, we can get into debate, but why I believe that's why the Freemasons and banksters overthrew all these powerful empires, because they could not get control and power under a church-backed and monarchy-backed society or country. So chapter 2 starts with Trotsky. All right. So Trotsky is like, Lenin and Trotsky. They're like peanut butter and jelly. So he leaves New York. He's going to start the revolution. His quote was, "You will have a revolution, a terrible revolution. What course it takes will depend much on what Mr. Rockefeller tells Mr. Hay to do. Mr. Rockefeller is a symbol of the American ruling class, and Mr. Haig is a symbol of its political tools." So 1916, the year preceding the revolution, internationalist Leon Trotsky gets expelled from France. And Trotsky just is a total, just such a scumbag. He was in France writing articles in a Russian language newspaper. He gets escorted across the Spanish border. The Madrid police arrest him. He gets put in a first-class cell, of course, because why not? Because he's royal. He's an elite, or he's a tool of the elites. Then they send his family on a steamer ship, crosses the ocean. They go to New York, and lots of other followers, as every leader has who's charismatic. They follow their leader. Some of them went to Mexico, where they ended up being able to write the first Soviet-type constitution in Mexico. And so now one would ask, how did Trotsky, speaking only Russian and German, survive in America, right? He's a communist. They don't really work very hard. They don't really get many jobs. And so he was asked that question in his like biography or whatever. And my only profession in New York was that of a revolutionary socialist. And those pay really well. That job pays very well. Just ask AOC and our other fellow awesome socialist politicians. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend it as a career field choice. So I had a joke I wrote in there. I wrote, but then again, Washington Post and New York Times journalists do pretty well. So who am I to judge? I don't know if it's as funny now, but I thought it was funny when I wrote these notes. So basically, though, he wrote like horrible op-eds for a socialist paper. Now, how does it, there's just so many hypocrisies in this. But so his apartment at the time had a fridge, which very few people in 1916 or 17 had a fridge in their house. Very, a telephone. He also traveled in a chauffeured limo and had servants as well. Wow, how a socialist is affording all these, upper class amenities. Well, we will find out. He was questioned about this stuff because, like I said, people like when you're in that time, you kind of know what's going on, right? He claimed, I only made $310 in 1917, and I distributed it among 5 immigrants going back to Russia. So basically, he's saying he owned nothing. Let me pull up Leon Trotsky so we can put a name to the face. Not a great looking guy. Jesus. Here he is. Hopefully you can see that. Let me just move me over. Or I'll go over. All right, here we go. So here is good old Leon Trotsky. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so he gave it back to his 5 immigrants going back to Russia, except hard to believe because he had a first class cell in Spain. Back then, you paid for your cell, your jail. He had an apartment paid 3 months in advance and all those other very expensive amenities. Some people like this journalist of the time when there was honest journalists, some maybe more honest journalists. There was still tons of liars, as we'll get into, but more honest journalists. And what's up, dude? So this one guy figured out how much money he made, and he made $244 for the year, which he gave away $310. So again, that doesn't work. He was able to pay for his apartment, and then he also had $10,000 that were taken from him when he went up to Canada. And so how often do we see this with socialist influencers or whatever you have them on social media, like, oh, donate money so I can keep telling you this socialist message, but yet they're capitalistic in the way they live. It's just hilarious. Like I see that all the time. Even people like AOC, she drives a Tesla. She clearly lives very well. She has a great salary, and I'm sure she's pocketing tons. And there's just so many. It's just disgusting. It's disgusting. Everyone's socialist until they make money. Just disgusting. But anyway, so Trotsky, he would deny, just like our politicians say, no, they're slandering me. I don't have any money. And I also found interesting, Trotsky, when he came to America, worked as an electrician, quote unquote, for Fox Film Studios, which I thought, that's odd. Mockingbird Media, Fox Film Studios, supplying a socialist. So even in 1917, the cinema, movies, whatever you want to call it, was already pushing out a socialist agenda. So I think that's pretty powerful, right? Because clearly today they do that. They push every woke agenda item they have down your throats every way to Wednesday, whatever the saying is. But yeah, so even back then they were supporting a socialistic viewpoint. Source of income, he took money from Germany. So now why Germany, right? Why would Germany be giving a Russian socialist, money and funds? And this is really big of this story, but I don't want to jump all over my notes. So Germany wanted to knock out powerful Russia, right? World War I starting. They don't want Russia to get too strong. So in a trial with Trotsky on the last day of questioning, day one, the last question was, how do you have all this money? There was like a Senate hearing. And of course, they broke for the day before they could answer. Then they never brought it up the next day. So I'm sure someone got a talking to there to make sure that they didn't ask too many questions about this man, Trotsky, this good looking fellow with the small round glasses. Greg Weinstein, he also collected funds for Trotsky in New York. They would channel them through a German newspaper in New York, subsidized by German government. And again, it's just like that. Some people, I forget who said it to me, but they're like, you really focus on the history of conspiracies or whatever. And yeah, because that's the same things they're doing today. And if they might just change the names, things get more technologically advanced. They haven't changed their games at all. They're exactly the same. Even with the Spanish flu, which was right around this, all this stuff, it's the exact same. Polio, they did the same thing. They changed the diagnostics the day that the pokety poke came out, and then so cases went down. Like, it's the same tricks over and over again. But yeah, so Germany subsidizing a German newspaper in New York. We see that today. How, governments, corporations, they own the newspaper. So how can you really get honest news? You can't get honest news. Woodrow Wilson and passport for Trotsky. Now, Woodrow Wilson was the fairy godmother for Trotsky. Let me put up Woodrow Wilson. I don't really know what Woodrow Wilson looks like. Woodrow Wilson. Here's Woodrow Wilson. Huh, he's awesome. None of these people are good looking. Their soul is eaten away. He's one of the worst presidents, if not the worst. Like, horrible man. Horrible, horrible, horrible man. So Woodrow Wilson, he made a passport for Trotsky because, why not help out a revolutionary socialist? He made him a American passport because he was banned to go to Russia. So he wanted this, obviously, to carry forward the revolution that Mr. Trotsky was planning. Russia was reaching out to America, like saying, hey, this is when the czars were still in power. Like, hey, please be careful. Like, we have these revolutionaries. They're trying to come back and overthrow us. Please, they might be in your country. Please just keep an eye out for them. Meanwhile, the U.S. government is providing them passports so they can return to the country that kicked them out, and so they can overthrow the monarchy and the church. So again, this is why I go back to this theory again. Like, there is something to this, that we have been brainwashed to think that you're not free under a Christian church. Oh, some dogs are fighting. A Christian church and a divinely chosen monarch, right? And I know that it's like even hard for me to accept as I say it, but there's something to this theory. Because why are you overthrowing all of these? Why are the same bankers and Freemasons overthrowing all these? Okay, you get it. Listen to my last episode if you want to hear more. All right, so Russia reaches out. This boat, SS Christianjeford, left New York with an interesting list of passengers. They had Trotsky and a group of revolutionaries, of Trotskyites, a Japanese revolutionist. The only innocent people on this ship that left New York were war messengers and two bankers from Wall Street to Germany. So they're probably not too innocent. If you're on Wall Street, you're probably a scumbag, corrupt, horrible person. So Canadian government documents. So Trotsky, the ship went up to Nova Scotia, gets stopped, and Trotsky's listed as a German POW, labeled a Russian socialist because he was. And Trotsky signed his full name when he got interned in Canada, Leon Bromstein Trotsky. So I don't know why they call him Trotsky and not Bromstein, but Canada stopped them because they knew they were trying to start a revolution, because the Russian government reached out to all these people that were neutral to say, hey, we've heard they might be in your countries. Please keep an eye out for them. And they said they should not be allowed back into Russia. And this is when they found the 10,000 on him. He told the truth. He said, yeah, I'm going back to Russia to start a revolution, because he knew who was backing him. When you feel untouchable, you're an idiot. You say stupid shit. And that's what he did. So of course, the banksters and Woodrow Wilson and these high military people, they need their pawns to be released. They can't be held in internment camps. How's the revolution going to start? So they've reached out to the Canadian military and like doing all this stuff. They said, well, they have a U.S. passport. They're U.S. citizens. You need to release them, even though this Canadian guy, Dr. Robert Miller, he was one of the guys that like eventually let him out in Canada. Sorry, he was the Freemasonic liberal officer. So his brother's over there and probably got tons of money. But the Canadian military, when they first got Trotsky, they knew who he was, all those things. This Colonel McLean was probably one of the few honest people in this story. He wrote an article about how Canada could have shortened the war if they just held Trotsky, and he wanted to do it. He was a man of like integrity. He was, a well-connected guy. He said how the Canadian politicians and officials were directly responsible for elongating World War I. Parliament and others were preventing the public from getting related facts. He wrote this all in an article, which is so awesome. Even back then, there's honest people, right? The people are generally good, except for these people that pull all the strings. And he wanted to do what was right. He knew Trotsky was just a pawn. And it was interesting. Trotsky spoke better German than Russian. So you immediately think Russia with Trotsky, but I don't know where he was from. I forget now. I think he was German, but yeah. So he organized. So he said somehow like the Canadian officials said that Trotsky was an American with an American passport. They demand the release. So eventually, though, they get him out because the good guys rarely win in this story of our history, right? So Trotsky's intentions and objections. So New York to Petrograd on a U.S. passport from Woodrow Wilson to carry forward the revolution. Trotsky said in an interview, an alliance with the U.S. was impossible, even though he requested 5 American officers as his inspectors for his army, railroad operating men from the military and equipment. Just such a faker, dude. Such a faker. Like, I can't collaborate with the Americans. They're capitalists. But yet, sorry. Thanks for coming, people. But anyway, yeah. So Trotsky, just so like typical of these socialistic people, dude. It's just they're all the same. So there was this Stalinist trials. This was funny. In 1930s, they accused Trotsky of being a fascist and an undercover capitalist agent. He was a paid agent of the international capitalism and fascism, even though these were just like traded insults among the communist community at the time, which were obviously true. But it's just funny, like even in each like group, you have people like, he's not communist enough, or in the libertarians, you're like, he's not libertarian enough, and they're like these insults. It's just interesting that it's just the same. The past is now, right? But yeah, so obviously he had support from international capitalists, and that's the same with Hitler and Mussolini. They also had support from international capitalists. So why would they support a socialistic government? Because greed, right? They want to be the ones that control that. So this is the key, that we're all told capitalists is like nemesis is communists, right? Like that's all you see on the news, this right versus left, like conservative versus socialist. They're socialists, they're capitalists, they're Wall Street, and they'd use us to fight these battles, but they're both the same. They're both controlled by the same rich people that want us to fight, right? So yeah, so Michael Grusenberg, chief Bolshevik agent in Scandinavia, confidential advisor to Chase National Bank. His dual role was known about, and why would they want that kind of person working with them, right? So if he works for Chase National Bank and he's a chief Bolshevik, why would you hire a Bolshevik if you're a banker? Because there are, again, I'm going to keep repeating myself. Trotsky's cousin was this guy, Abram Givazatovzo. He was a private banker in Kiev. So Trotsky's cousin's a banker. born before the Russia Revolution and in Stockholm after the revolution. Said he was anti-Bolshevist, except he was acting on behalf of the Soviets in 1918 and after. So clearly there is a higher allegiance or political label than socialist capitalists, right? It's just a scam just a scam. They're just names. They don't mean anything to these people. They mean something to you and to me and to the public, but the people at the top are just laughing. They don't have these beliefs. So Lenin and German assistance for the Bolshevik Revolution. So in April 1917, Lenin and 32 Russian revolutionaries journeyed by train from Switzerland across Germany through Sweden to Petrograd. So how would they get through? If they were these revolutionaries, how are they able to travel through Germany? All these things. They know their plan is clear. They're going to complete the revolution. And who was it approved? It was approved, financed, and facilitated by the German General Staff. And again, going back to my monarchy theory, this was when the Kaiser was still in power in Germany. And it was not known to the Kaiser that his military intelligence people were approving this shipment of revolutionaries to Russia. And, I'm sure the German people that paid this off, they weren't thinking that these double agents would ever be used against Germany. Maybe they thought loyalty. I don't know. But the highest political officer who approved Lenin's journey was Theobald von Bethmann. And he was a descendant of the Frankfurt banking family Bethmann, which made tons of cash in the 19th century. He's not loyal to the Kaiser or to Germany. He eventually gets pushed out, but not before he planned and approved the Lenin journey. And yeah. Germany. So the people that all approved Sutton gave a list of it was like Bethmann, Arthur Zimmerman, Alexander Israel, Jacob Frustenberg. These were these German military people that they were the final stops. They had very high rank. They're the ones that each step of it, they had to sign off on what allowance and all these things. And those were the guys that signed off. And they all get kicked out eventually, but not before the damage is done, right? So Germany, why would they do this, right? Why would these German military people do this? Well, just like at this time before it was totally globalists were already international. This was before that happened, right? They were somewhat international, but Germany won priority access to post-war markets in Russia, and they wanted to overthrow the Tsar because then they could control those markets because you don't have a monarchy that's susceptible to real corruption. And, they want the best for their country, so they're going to keep the money in-house as opposed to a communist or socialist government where they can be paid off because they're lacking all their resources because nobody wants to work, right? So this idea started in Germany in 1915, and this idea to throw Russia into a revolution, get the post-war markets, and it happens in Wall Street as well. So JP Morgan and this company they made, American International Corporation, attempted to control both domestic and foreign revolutionaries in the U.S. for their own purposes. So they're just paying people to overthrow their governments. Lenin also had other demands that he wanted. He was getting a little cocky or a little greedy. He wanted Russian troops moved to India to expand so he could make a communist revolution in India. German industrialist Steins also supported this Russian publishing house for press, because the importance of press has been known for hundreds of years, right? That's where people get their information. They're going to believe what they read because they're honest people. Why would they lie? And that's the same logic that they've used against us forever. Why they crack down on so much censorship? Because if you have people that they're rather going to get real news because people can feel honesty, you'd rather get real news from not a paid pharmaceuticals backing TV show that's going to tell you nothing bad about the pharmaceutical industry, right? No, I don't know where I was going with that rant. So a German industrialist supported a Russian publishing house. Both Lenin and Trotsky had German funds to support their movement. they weren't going to be successful without funds. Like every revolution, you need funds, right? You need funds. And they're kind of double dipping. This was such a key. Let me just check what's up, Jesse? All right. 5 watching. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. So honored that you're spending your Thursday night with me. So this was interesting. So there's this thing called the Sisson documents. And it just like, again, that comment about history, like if you don't know what they've done before, you're not going to see what they're doing now. So that's why it's so important to look up the history and to read what happened, because it makes so many things clearer now, right? So the Sisson documents, 1918, Edgar Sisson, he was this Petrograd representative on the U.S. Committee of Public Information, and he got from like some way, he got a batch of Russian documents purporting to prove that Trotsky and Lenin and other Bolsheviks were getting payments / agents of the German government. It gets shipped to the U.S. in secrecy. I'm sure they let little inklings out. They were accepted as authentic, except for the New York Evening Post, who was owned by J.P. Morgan. And basically, though, they have these huge things. They eventually find out that they're forgeries, okay? So now why would they do this whole charade of these documents shipped in secrecy, given to newspaper journalists who got the inside scoop? They published huge things. And it's because, just like they always do, they wanted the public to think now any other information that comes out about the Bolsheviks being funded by Wall Street, and not like, because this paper said Germany was the only ones funding Bolsheviks, the evil Germans. But now, so when if the info came out at the time that, Wall Street, JP Morgan, capitalists, all these people are funding the Bolsheviks, oh, those are fake too, right? That's what they do. Like they're so intelligent in the public because they're so tired and watching crappy TV and eating junk food that they don't have the time to investigate this stuff. So they send fakes out there to just be like, it's another fake. Okay. And then when it's written about in the paper, like new evidence shows or theories about capitalists supporting the Bolsheviks, forgeries probably, or whatever they say. I'm not a headline writer, but you got what I'm saying, right? We're just so easily manipulated. So it was like a tug of war in Washington, right? Because back then you still had some honest people. The State Department, who were elected officials that wanted the best for the United States and the Russians and wanted to be a totally neutral country. They wanted to stop the revolutionaries returning to Russia, but with the American passports, they had no power to stop. How'd they get that? The Bolshevik Revolution was known out at least 6 weeks before it happened. The British government even advised its British residents to leave Russia 6 weeks before the event. What a totally organic event, right? It just happened out of nowhere. November 29th, 1917, Woodrow Wilson ordered a no interference with the Bolsheviks revolution. State departments kept in touch with the Bolshevik authorities using channels that would, my notes covered, using channels that were like just secret channels so nobody else could figure out. And there's this guy, Colonel House. He was super corrupt, so corrupt, cabled Woodrow from Paris that important U.S. newspapers treating Russia as the enemy should be suppressed. So I like boomers. I have like a boomer boss. I love him, but he'll say like, Walter, maybe he doesn't say this exact thing, but like Walter Cronkite, when they just told you the news, they've never told us the news. Even in 1917, the military is squashing stories about the truth. This is all they do. They've perfected this. And that's why the internet is so powerful and they need to censor it because it's too powerful, right? Now everyone can video and get the actual story out. Franklin Sands, he was this Morgan-controlled American International Corporation guy. sent memorandum urging America to accept the new Bolshevik government. Why would a capitalist do that? Even Moscow paper was writing about how U.S. bankers were funding the Bolsheviks. Why were they doing this? And why were they doing this? So Moscow was writing. So the truth is out there. It slips through all the time, but no one focuses on that. Wall Street and the world revolution. So before World War I, the structure of the U.S. is dominated by two conglomerates, right? Let's pull up these classy fellows because we have almost everything to thank for them. J.P. Morgan. Here is Mr. J.P. Morgan. So it's owned by Rockefeller, Standard Oil, right? Which created the AMA, our pharmaceutical industry, beauty industry, all this stuff. You need oil. Oh, let me just look at John Rockefeller, Standard Oil. So yeah, so they dominated literally the entire fabric of U.S. economy, right? Everything. They owned everything. They monopolized petroleum and allied industries, copper, trusts, smelters, trust, tobacco trust, all Rockefeller, right? Morgan, steel, railroads, banking, shipping, electrical, rubber. He also had some banks too. National Bank of Commerce, Chase National Bank, New York Life Insurance, and Guaranty Trust Company. Citibank, which was a Rockefeller-owned bank, one of the largest banks because of Standard Oil, had United States Trust Company, Hanover National Bank, major life insurance companies, Equitable Life, and Mutual of New York. I mean, these things, they still dominate today. They just changed their names, but they still are in existence today. The money like the trust owners have is literally, and a trust for any, it's like the money accumulates, they put it in this fund, and if they want to support something like Shark Tank, like I'll give you 200,000 if you give me 10% of your company, right? Like the company I work for, they had before COVID, this one bank family, it's owned by this family. They have like a crack team of lawyers and business people, and they came to us and they wanted to invest, whatever, 10 million, and they get, we pay interest on that going back. So they look at your finances and all these things. So you can see the power that these trusts could have, because if there's something that could threaten maybe another thing that they're involved in, you're not getting it from them, right? You're not getting it from them. Just like the stories that, well, it's true, they had cars that were steam powered and electrical powered all the way back in around this time. And why didn't those come out? Why didn't they mass produce? It's not because they didn't work. It's because who controlled all the oil? So do you want a water car that's renewable put out? No, you buy that and you cancel that building. That's done, right? So Guaranty Trust, dominated by the Harriman interest originally Harriman, another lovely American, a pioneer of America, right? Oh, the men who built America, Harriman. I don't know. Oh, here, Averell Harriman. He's one of them. He's one of the guys. Averell Harriman. Okay, yeah. So Edward Henry's the eldest, dies in 1909. Morgan and his associates bought into Guaranty Trust as well, along as Mutual Life, New York Life. So 1919, Morgan, controlling stake of Guaranty Trust, absorbed 6 lesser trust companies. So just a powerhouse, right? Truly deciding who gets the money and who doesn't get the money. Just tons of money. Controlling stake. End of World War I, Guaranty Trust and Bankers Trust were first and second largest trust companies in the U.S., both owned by Mr. J.P. Morgan. I don't see a problem with that, dude. There could be no issues with that. U.S. financiers were involved in financing revolutions long before 1917. And this is such a key point. This wasn't new. This wasn't like what a brilliant idea. Let's overthrow the Russians. No. They've been doing this forever. They play with us. Wall Street was involved in the intervention in the Panama Canal, done by law firms Sullivan and Cromwell, whose their name pops up all the time in these stories or in these like books. They sent revolutionaries, financed them at the point. So Colombia owned part of the canal, and because they were a nationalistic country and they wanted what was best for Colombia, well, Wall Street, they want part of that canal. Sorry guys, we want that canal. So they sent revolutionaries down there and created complete chaos and havoc because they're being funded by billionaire bankers and probably more money than the country of Colombia has. And eventually they give up there. They either change your government, they'll overthrow your government, or you give them what they want. Real nice people. Chinese Revolution of 1912. Sun Yat-sen led the revolution. Well, he gets his money from to overthrow the emperor? Well, he's financed by secret Chinese societies with goods and cash. The law firm Hunt, Hill and Betts, located at 120 Broadway. We'll get more into that. Charles Hill was, I think, he's the Hill of Hunt, Hill and Betts. He's director of Westinghouse subsidiaries, also located at 120 Broadway. We'll get more into 120 Broadway in a little bit. Charles R. Crane, organizer of Westinghouse in Russia, rolls in before and after the revolution to get Westinghouse opened in the new government of Russia. So in return for financial support, Sun Yat-sen promised the Hill Syndicate railroad, banking, and commercial concessions in revolutionary China. How kind of him, right? More, and it's just, again, it's like sickening. It's just sickening hearing these stories. The more and more I read, the more and more I learn again that we were tricked, right? There's something without morality, with usury and greed to exorbitant levels. They definitely played us, right? Same bird. This is capitalism. This is for libertarianism. They just go in and plant. These people are horrible, these people. In Mexico, 1915 to 1916. Oh, I'm reading. They're doing it right now in Cuba, Haiti, South Africa. Jesse says that the U.S. government's behind all the, yeah, I'm sure. And if it's not the U.S. government, it's internationalist globalists that also control the U.S. government, right? It's the same. I don't even know, do we have a U.S. government? I don't even know what it is anymore. But 1915-16 in Mexico, von Rietlin, he was a German espionage agent in the United States attempting to embroil the U.S. with Mexico and Japan to divert ammunition which was then flowing to the Allies in Europe. Kind man. He just wanted the war to end sooner, I'm sure. So payment for the ammunition that was shipped from the U.S. to the Mexican revolutionary made through none other than Guarantee Trust Company. So von Rietlin advisor, his name was Summerfield, paid $380,000 to Guarantee to the Western Cartridge Company for ammunition, which was shipped to El Paso. Pancho Villa was the name of the revolutionary. After Villa received the weapons, he murdered 17 American miners, then invaded New Mexico, murdered another 18 more Americans. And you can think of this as like a dry run to the Bolshevik Revolution, because then the new government in Mexico was the first Soviet-type constitution, which was written by Trotsky. This revolution wouldn't have succeeded without American munitions, powers, without American help. They do what they want. Like, there is no stopping them. There is no stopping them. Unless you just leave the system. That's why I always say that. But yeah, just disgusting. And that's truly a dry run, because the Bolshevik Revolution, there is this one story, like in the house, like of, I don't know, Parliament, I don't know, or maybe it was like one of the dwellings of the monarchy. The blood flow was like, I'm not exaggerating, it was so thick and deep, the drains were backed up, and there was like 2 feet of just coagulated blood in these hallways. Just like vicious, right? American bankers and czarist loans. U.S. was neutral until 1917 because we didn't want to get into international affairs. You couldn't raise loans or give money to belligerent countries. And this was, again, because back then we had a semblance of morality. Usury was kind of new to the country, and we were a true Christian nation, or almost a true Christian nation. So we didn't want to fund death, right? Just crazy how far, and either the founding fathers knew what they were writing, or it's been so perverted that it's just sad. Like, could you imagine taking a loan from your government and then paying back the loan? Maybe like a small, because you're doing something good for your nation or for yourself, you're bettering, you're building whatever that helps. So you just pay it back to the government. And now we have this horrible Federal Reserve System with usury. It's just sickening. It's just sickening. So Morgan House floated the loans for the British and French in the war before we got in. He said, no, they're not war loans. We are just simply facilitating international trade. And Woodrow Wilson explained that the sale of bonds in U.S. to foreign government, it's not financing a war. We're just continuing trade. Yeah, they happen to be in a war. Maybe they use that money. I can't tell them what to do with their money. I can't. Just ridiculous. Olaf Ashberg. I know that's a good point, Jesse. Jesse in the chat says that we do it because we don't China and Russia to do it. They infiltrate the movements, take over the governments. That is a very valid point. And if China and Russia are like truly our enemies, I don't know anymore. I assume like they're still on the same team, but if they were, then I think that's a very valid point. That's Jesse saying like we cause these overthrows because we want to have our guy in power as opposed to them doing it. But then China's doing it to us. I don't know, but that's a really good point. All right, so Olaf Ashberg. He was a Swedish Jewish banker who will keep popping up in this story. He was in New York in 1915 working with Morgan, getting loans for Bolshevik Russians. Even back then, he was also working with National City Bank. He was known as the Bolshevik banker. Nice alliteration. Let's see, Olaf Ashberg. Olaf Ashberg. Here he is. Whoa. Can everyone see him? Well, you can't answer me, but here he is. There's Olaf Ashberg. So clearly Morgan and Rockefeller were not abiding by the international law or the law we set, or more just being moral in any sense. Not that that's surprising. They're using State Department transmit communications. They paid off whoever. They'd allow them to go through because they got an extra $100 at the end of the week. And what harm could it really do? Or we'll let you rise up if you just let these messages go. Our buddy Olaf, he was the intermediary between Wall Street and Bolsheviks. So back to Olaf, he was in New York 1916. He was owner of this Nya Banken, which was founded in 1912 in Stockholm, Sweden. Associates were Swedish socialists and elites because, again, it's not that everyone rise the working man. It's a monopoly, state-controlled monopoly. In 1918, his bank got put on an Allied blacklist for financing in Germany. No matter, Nya changed his name to Svenska Ekonomiebolaget. That's the best you'll get. And banks in London, agent was a British Bank of North Commerce. So he has a banking agent in Britain. Who was his name? Earl Grey. Now, Earl Grey is the T. Yes, it is. Earl was a close associate, of course, with the lovely Cecil Rhodes. And you can look up Odd Man, my friend's episodes on Cecil Rhodes. But so Olaf, he's representing his bank in New York and the Tsarist Minister of Finance, negotiates a $50 million loan for Russia with the American banking syndicates. He got a loan for Russia in America with a 7.5% interest and got some cash for his bank in Russia. So he wasn't doing it for the kindness of his heart. We'll just say that, right? He made out pretty damn well on getting the loan for the Bolsheviks. And he was making connections because he knew the industry was going to open up once they overthrow the Tsar, and he wants to be on the winning side, first in line to get whatever he wants. So even though he's just such a scumbag too. All these people are. So while he helps the czar get a loan from America, he's funneling funds from German government to the Russian revolutionaries. Just literally, he playing all sides, Olaf Ashberg. Then Nia Bank and Guarantee Trust, they joined Rumsco Bank. The 1922s, it was the Soviets' first international bank. It was former Russian private bankers, so even people from the previous government, because everyone wants to be on the winning side and get first in line, these bankers. Some new German government investments, Swedish, American, British bankers. And this Rumsco Bank was headed by the good old Mr. Olaf. It was in the former Siberian Bank building in Petrograd. It was the head office. Yeah, just in the US, the bank was also represented by none other than Guarantee Trust. Basically, though, they were giving like raw materials in exchange for American machinery in this developing country. Makes tons of profit off this representation, paid off so many that he involved in is just disgusting. So Guarantee Trust and German espionage. World War I Germany raised considerable funds in New York for espionage covert ops in America. So it wasn't just America at this time that's doing this. Kind of like goes to Jesse's point how China and Russia. And I think back then that's definitely was true. So Wall Street is competing against German capitalists who can get this land and resources first. So they're all kind of like bickering, Morgan and Rockefeller versus whoever their German counterparts were. Obviously, we're a much larger country, but they were doing it longer, right? So German Guarantee Trust. So Germany's raising considerable funds. Blah, blah, blah. So Guarantee Trust, an American international corporation. So they, like I said, they funded the Bolsheviks. Yeah, okay, I already said that. Karl Hainan, financial affairs of Germany and the United States, help transport goods. I'm just skipping this. First major loan. All right, we'll just get rid. Basically, again, these guaranteed trust payments, just supporting everything. They're supporting these revolutions in Russia or in Mexico. Also, which was interesting, this Western cartridge company that Guaranteed Trust was giving money to fund them, these other revolutionaries. I'm pretty sure the Western Cartridge Company is in the Midwest. Because so the Bush family back in the day, the first Bush, before Prescott Bush, who was the Skull and Bones guy. So his dad, Illinois. So that was him. So his dad, Prescott Bush's dad, the Skull and Bones guy, he was like the director or head of this Western Cartridge Company in Ohio or Illinois. It might not have been Western. I think it was Western. But yeah, so he's like in charge of this company. So he's building all these weapons, getting funded from, these powerful bankers to fund the war. 70% of the weapons were made and the ammunition was made in America that was used in World War I, funding both sides of the war. So he gets caught for doing that. And he gets put on trial for trading with the Enemies Act. Meanwhile, his son Prescott is funding the Nazis in Germany while he's an American citizen. We're in the war. So it's just like father, like son. His dad's literally being tried while Prescott's doing the exact same thing his dad did. They're just scumbags is the point I'm getting at, right? Just disgusting, dude. And of course, his dad gets off because Prescott's a Skull and Bones member. But yeah, I don't know why. I just wanted to say that. So American International Corporation funded German wartime espionage against the United States and its own people. So a Guarantee Trust Company funding German espionage against the U.S. They would purchase this one guy, Paul Bolo Pasha. He was a German espionage agent. He would go around to foreign countries, purchase their newspaper to publish in favor of Germany. And again, this goes to credence like, what can we even believe in history? It got credit with the Guarantee Trust Company, Guarantee Trust was financially assisting the Allies and Germany at the exact same time. So again, not only illegal, but the morality on that, like you're having your own citizens be murdered and die in a war while you're funding both sides because you want to just keep it as long as you can and just keep making money. Guarantee Trust and Minotto Calo threads. So there's this guy, this was a good story too. So Count Jacques Minotto links Bolshevik revolution in Russia with German banks, espionage in the US, Guarantee Trust Company in New York, the French Bolshevik Revolution. So all these revolutions are always funded by the same people. So again, you've heard my theory. I said it like 20 times already. But Count Jacques is descendant of Italian nobility, employed at Deutsche Bank in Berlin, 1912, sent to New York to represent Deutsche Bank, then back to London, went back to New York when World War I hit, met this German ambassador, entered employment of Guarantee Trusts under this guy, Max May, who's a scumbag that we'll probably get to again later. Also associated with Olaf. It's just one big club. He's one bigwig at Guarantee Trust, sent to Latin America, wanted to find a workaround to fund Germany more and more. So he's just getting sent out to other countries, like so they can send the money there and then send it, just being secretive to not be too obvious. Eventually gets arrested on pro-German activities. He's bailed out. Who cares? Goes back to Latin America, meets up with this notorious French politician whose wife murdered a journalist. And all three of them hang out down in Latin America. And Count Jacques, the politician was Joseph Caillou. He gets returned to France, and he's hanging out with the newspaper buyer guy, buying more papers, and they're trying to stage a Bolshevik revolution in France. Long story short, I made that longer than it has to be. And but yeah, they use German funds to form a French radical socialist party. So basically, what I'm getting at, Guarantee Trust is funding socialist revolutions all over the world, using their bankers to fund each movement. And it just makes you realize like war, chaos pays, wealth redistribution. And what are they doing now? Wealth redistribution. All right. Hopefully we got through that one. That was like a tougher chapter. Now this is so key. The American Red Cross. What an amazing company or charity, right? The American Red Cross. Oh, God. Always going into troubling countries. So American Red Cross is started right around this 1915. And it was started by Miss Mabel Boardman. She was the moving force behind it. So who backed it? Who supported it? I'm sure good people, right? No, well, the endowment came from Morgan, Harriman, and other powerful families. $2 million gets supported, given basically all from Morgan. And the Red Cross is a virtual arm of the government, right? And makes incalculable contributions to winning the war, doing coups, like underground wars. I don't mean in the tunnels. I mean coups. The motto of the Red Cross is neutrality and humanity. So it's co-opted this first one. They want to go to Russia. There's a revolution there. Let's help the people. They're dying. They're being murdered. They're starving. So, who would you want to send? You want to send doctors. You want to send nurses. You want to send, maybe some farmers. I don't know. Well, they send George Hill, president of American Tobacco, Grayson Murphy, VP of Guarantee Trust, Ive Lee, PR expert for the Rockefellers, William Boyce Thompson, director of the Federal Reserve. He offered to pay the entire expense of the commission to Russia. Members of the mission received no pay, but he donated $200,000 was donated used for political subsidies. So of the money that he gave, none of it went to the Red Cross people. It went to the political people in Russia. So I told all expenses paid by Thompson's, uniform, everything. The commission, imagine there was an urgent need for doctors or nurses, like I said, except in Russia at the time, there was actually a surplus of medical talent. Half the hospitals were empty in the large cities. So why would you go there anyway? But comprised of 24 people, all having military rank, 3 orderlies, 2 photographers, 2 interpreters, So only 5 of the 24 were doctors, and 2 of them were PhDs, not MDs. And I think they were like psychologists. So that's it. Should tell you all you need to know about what type of PhDs are going there. So the majority of the mission was crafted up by Wall Street, New York financial district. Had a major Wardwell, who was the treasurer of Standard Oil, because he cares about the poor people of Russia. 2 members of the Swift company, they helped this German guy get out. He was a spy. They got that company helped him get out of prison. 2 unofficial people added on the mission: Frederick M. Rose, representative of National City Bank in Petrograd, and then Herbert Magnuson, a spy for Mr. Thompson in China. So all people you would want giving charity and helping you are there, right? They want to tell you to cheat on your taxes, though. I'm sure they would do well with that. So American Red Cross mission so they also at the same time, and the people that are in the Red Cross, they have great intentions. I'm sure they want to help, but you see, they use this charity to sneak in, to seem a neutral and just help your people, and they're not that. And this is what Barack Obama's mom did. I think do I get to that? I'm saying it now. I'll probably have to come up on my note again later, but that's what she worked for, this thing like SIAD, I think it is. And she was like an archaeologist. Her dad was military intelligence. He was in Lebanon when they were overthrowing the Lebanese government. And so she goes to Kenya to study archaeology. What do you know? There is a coup going on at the same time. So she gets impregnated by Obama's dad. He eventually gets killed, I think, like a few, like 10 years later. But so she takes young Barack, and, wow, they just escaped. Thank God, all that violence in Kenya. I mean, let's go somewhere safe. So they go to Thailand, which, what do you know? Another coup is happening the same time she's there. I mean, what are the odds, right? What are the odds of that? So this isn't new. So yeah, so there was an American Red Cross mission in Romania. And just to demonstrate like the 2 differences between these 2 things, they left right around the same time. 30 people, 16 were doctors or surgeons, as opposed to the 29 bankers and 3 actual healthcare people. 2 lawyers, 1 treasurer, 1 engineer, and as opposed the Russian mission had 15 lawyers and businessmen. In the Russian mission, the 3 doctors quit in disgust for their lack of doing anything better for humanity. And the chairman of the Romanian mission begged. He said, I need money to save thousands of lives. Like, thousands are going to starve if you don't send supplies. Do they send it? No, they don't send it, because these people don't care about lives. He reached out to Mr. Thompson, director of the Federal Reserve in Russia. He said, who just paid for that whole trip. And he said he didn't care, because they're not there to provide actual aid. So Romanian situation kept getting worse, reaching out to multiple people, no avail, wrote like all these SOSs. Doesn't happen. Thompson and Kerensky's Russia. So what was the Petrograd Red Cross doing then, since they clearly weren't helping the people, right? Well, while they were living opulently in Petrograd, Thompson created 2 programs that are going to really help the people: an American propaganda program and a support for the Russian Liberty Loan. Let's look up William Thompson just while we're here. Google wants to know my location. Here is William Boyce Thompson. Here he is. Wow. Okay. Got $2 million to support the Bolshevik press and education, lectures and movies. I'm sure to just make Avengers like movies, though. Nothing propaganda. To continue war against Germany, JP Morgan contributed $500,000 for the Liberty Loan. Thompson gives Bolsheviks $1 million. It's recorded in the Washington Post. This happened. And just people, they trust, because they're good people. The National City Bank, Wall Street owned, was exempted from the Bolshevik nationalization decree. The only foreign bank exempted. What are the odds of that? Wow, they must really liked them, believed in them. Socialist mining promoter Raymond Robbins. So Thompson eventually leaves Russia to go back to the U.S. His deputy Raymond Robbins was put in charge. Robbins is another dirtbag. Manager of like this phosphate company, goes to Alaska for the gold rush, switched to the socialism reform movement. He's part of FDR's Progressive Party. They just lie and hide. Went to Russia as a social economist, whatever that means, and he just wanted to increase his wealth and power. I believe that we would be in control of the surplus resources of Russia and have control officers at all points on the frontier. If they would just, if you just allowed us to get in there, American public, just speaking like a true socialist, caring about the working man. So I told you, it's a vehicle, the Red Cross vehicle for revolutionary activities. Tsar Nicholas, when the revolution was happening, moved from Petrograd to Tobolsk for safety. The train carried Japanese Red Cross placards. So it's a scam, dude. The Hungarian Bolshevik Revolution, which I talked about in my Freemasonry episode, Bela Kun, he snuck revolutionaries in operating as members of the Red Cross. Red Cross members that were Bolsheviks snuck into France, trying to overthrow the French government. And the same thing in Switzerland. And there was the Barack Obama story. To reiterate, neither Thompson's nor Robbins was a Bolshevik or a socialist. They just wanted to gain financial gains. Let me see. Consolidation, export. I don't want to make it too long. I'll go for like 25 more minutes here. So hopefully you guys are learning something, and 25 more minutes. So you're getting the point, though. It's just more horrible stuff. William Thompson played a crucial role in the Bolshevik Revolution. Without him, his support to Trotsky and Lenin, the Bolsheviks would have withered away. So Thompson, besides being the Federal Reserve Director, he's a promoter of mining stocks, like this high-risk business that just scams people out of their money. Honest people like, oh, this field shows great promise. Let's help, and then they just take it. He handed stock market ops for Guggenheim copper interests. And for a while, it was like Guggenheim versus Rockefeller, I guess, in America. And Thompson swindled all these people to get the capital for a Guggenheim war chest. There was this thing, Kennecott Syndicate, $200 million. It was a Guggenheim company. And 3/4 of Guggenheim was controlled by the Whitney family. The Whitney family you don't hear of that much anymore. I don't ever hear of them, but their name comes up in all of these stories. The Whitney family was one of like those Mayflower families that came over here. They were true like the Ivy League blue bloods that were in Skull and Bones, and very powerful. Like Rockefeller in the beginning, like they looked down on Rockefeller. Like they made fun of the way they talked, like the Whitney family. And I can't remember the other names. What was Bush? Walkers. I don't even know if the Walkers were, but Whitney's were one of the big guys. Putnam, I'm pretty sure. Damn, I'm just reaching. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So big player in copper, used in munitions, which was, used for weapons or bullets, also in railroad, and heaviest stockholders in Chase National Bank. So very, bank. Thompson became the first full-term director of the Federal Reserve in New York, the most important branch of the Federal Reserve. After leaving the Red Cross mission, Robbins spreads Thompson plan for spreading Bolshevik propaganda in Europe because they just want the best for the people. It was behind a German revolt in 1918. They were dropping Bolshevik propaganda from airplanes, made plans to sell the Bolshevik government to the governments of Europe, convinced anti-Bolshevik British government that the Bolsheviks were there to stay, and you just have to do business with them because they want that to succeed, because then they get all this resources from Russia. And they did the same thing with the U.S. government. Like, they're here to stay. We're bankers. We know what we're talking about. You want to win the next presidency? You want to get money for your next campaign? Well, just accept the Bolshevik government. Lloyd George, who was the prime minister of Great Britain at that time, super corrupt guy, but no one could admit. He was beholden to an international arms dealer who funded both sides, Mr. Zaharoff, would consult him before any attack. Servants of the crown were his informants. it's just the same story over and over again. Like, he got them to give the full assistance to the Soviet government to organize a volunteer revolutionary army. The Allies even discouraged Japan from intervening in Siberia, because Japan at that time was going up in Siberia trying to get, like, make railroads. They were such a powerful country, Japan, right? And the Allies, this is obviously before World War II, said they sent their troops to protect Soviet Siberia, which was about to be Soviet Siberia, from the Japanese, so that it was looking out for the Soviets. Right, right. That's what they were doing. Yeah. And they built Soviet Russia up. And then we have the Cold War. You see, it's all contrived for us, not for them. They know what they're doing. Yeah. Yeah. It's just disgusting. I'm kind of skipping ahead here to some things. See what else I want to talk about. Bolsheviks return to New York. All right. So just basically that chapter, guys. The Federal Reserve Director, surprise, is a horrible person. He's corrupt. He's evil. He's the first Federal Reserve Director, this guy, William Boyce Thompson, and he has no soul. He's probably in hell. So Bolsheviks return to New York. So I'll wrap this up pretty soon. I don't want it to get, I know, like, I try to make history interesting, and I find it so thrilling, but I don't know. So I don't want to bore you. So Bolsheviks return to New York. They success with their revolution. They got their Soviet government, right? They won. So they're coming to New York. They want to establish diplomatic and propaganda outlets in the U.S. And there was this guy, Alexander Nyberg, active propagandist for the U.S., and they have the Soviet Bureau. So Nyberg, he gets replaced by Ludwig Martins. He's the first Soviet ambassador to the U.S. His office is located in New York. Why he's not located in D.C., where our government is, well, I'm sure you can imagine why the Soviet first ambassador is located in New York. Because our real government resides there, or did. Industry at that time obviously collapsed in Russia, because when you're a communist, you don't work very well with a threat to a gunpoint, right? So Russia needs machine, railway, goods, clothing, chemicals, drugs, all things needed. And before the Soviets took over, Russia's economy was booming. Like, they had awesome, like, their oil production dropped, which was like their biggest export. It dropped like 100% after the revolution. So the Soviets, though, had a lot of gold and raw materials. That's what they offered. They made connections with the industrialists, even though they already had them, even though there was an embargo and non-recognition. They were also doing so well, they're providing cash for the Communist Party in America. And, again, 1919, you still had some honesty in the politics. This Soviet Bureau gets raided by the Lust Committee. They found out the monthly rent was like $300, and salaries came about $4K a month, paid all for by a guy named Michael Grusenberg, who was a guaranteed trust associate of New York. Found out through the raid that Martins was connection with all the left in the United States. The British also got info that the U.S. refused to print in their report, and they got the name Julius Hammer. And Hammer family had very close ties with Russia, and Arm & Hammer. And I meant to look this up. I think Arm & Hammer is the baking soda. I'm pretty sure, right? Arm & Hammer. That's what I'm going to look it up. Baking soda. I'm pretty sure. He was a rich guy. Yes. I don't know. It sounds like it, though, right? If I'm wrong, someone might be laughing here. But anyway, Arm & Hammer, the Hammer family, they were rich. They were the chairman of Occidental Petroleum Corporation. Their one son was a socialist. He got in prison for being a socialist. He was aborting like over 100 children for people. God knows what he was like really doing with those kids. Those feet. Oh, I don't even know, but he sounds like a real sicko. So the corporate allies. So Martins was arrested. He claimed the big business was backing him. The guy of the Soviet bureau said, "No, I'm backed by these big businesses. Please don't arrest me." And he named names. And all the corporations said that they denied it, but all the papers so United States Steel Corporation is not listed in the Soviet files, but a United States Steel Products Company is listed. Clearly shell companies. Like these people were smart back then if they got caught. So yeah, so the American bankers didn't just only fund their revolution, they're funding these people to come back and push their propaganda. European bankers and Bolsheviks, along with Guarantee Trust, European bankers, they all gave financial support to the Bolsheviks, even back in America. There was even one guy, Dmitry Rubinstein. He's a Bolshevik banker. He's jailed in Tsarist Petrograd because he's so corrupt. Then he makes a new company, Second Russian Life Insurance, gets put at 120 Broadway. He has ties with Olaf Ashberg. He moves to Stockholm. All these people just playing both sides of the game, right? Almost there. I hope last two chapters. So in 120 Broadway, NYC. So I mentioned that a few times in the show, and literally every single company, obviously I mentioned the show like 10 times, they're all located at 120 Broadway. Like literally this book occurred at 120 Broadway. So what's 120 Broadway? Let's see if it's still. I wonder if it's still exists. Let's say in 1920. I guess this is what it looked like. Oh. So yeah, so the original building was destroyed like in 1915. They built a new building here. It was like 34 floors. So it wasn't like the largest building, but it became known as Equitable Life Building. Had some connection to Hitler here. Okay, but anyway, it was the HQ of the Fed, American International Corporation. Ludwig Martins was obviously in this building as well. The Morgan firm, all these people. But yeah, just interesting that all these companies were in this one place. And so American International Corporation was there, which is a big company in this story. It's owned by JP Morgan Interest. They have this idea, these two railroad contractors were convinced that there's not much more railroad building to be done in the United States. So let's get together and let's build railroads everywhere that doesn't have railroads. So Guarantee Trust is like, that's a good idea, but you're thinking too small. Let's do everything. So they buy AIC or they get engaged. Everyone wants in stock of this company. 23 million investment, 23 million in 1916, 27 million in 1917. And so they invest all these investments. They get representation in London, Paris, Buenos Aires, Peking, Petrograd, all over the world. And Allied Machinery was a company, their entire share was taken up by AIC. Also invested in the United Fruit Company. If you don't know, the United Fruit Company was involved in Central America with a revolution in the 1920s. Essentially AIC and Guarantee Trust. They funded a revolution, I think Guatemala, to keep the fruit trees under control of private entities, because at the time they wanted to nationalize it so the people of Guatemala could prosper. Well, no, you can't steal these were their trees. They're making insane profit on them. We're not going to let you do that. So they fund a revolution to oust the new leader of that. So the United Fruit Company, a Morgan Guarantee Trust controlled thing, could continue operating. Just the same story as they always do. Just same story they always do. So AIC had a vested interest in continuing World War I. This shouldn't be shocking. Because they had meatpacking, General Electric, shipbuilding, shipping, uh, National City Bank, DuPont, Rockefellers, copper mining, all owned and pushed by AIC, all things that are used in weaponry and in war that goes. So they're just making pure profits. So they have no reason why they want this war to end. Loss of life? Who cares? They're making millions on millions, right? And then even American International, they contributed 1 million to the cause. 1910, like they did a loan to Ecuador, which was an imprison tactic. It's the same thing. So this American International would just give loans to countries. They knew they couldn't pay them back, and then they take your natural resources. Charlie Robinson always talks about that book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And that's what these trusts loan a government money. They know the government won't be able to pay it back because whatever they're loaning them to use with it, they know they've done the math. They don't make loans that are going to work out in your favor, right? They're usurists. Is that the word? They commit usury, right? They're professionals at this. They did the same thing to a sugar in Puerto Rico. They got the sugar company, like the sugar there. They did it. They helped funded, the Red Cross in Russia, the secret Russian treaties. Just disgusting. All right, here's where I'm going to end it. So guarantee trust goes to Russia. Just more of the same. They at the time, the whole thing of this point of this is Russia. They get a loan from Guarantee Trust, and they need to pay it back. So they send like 20 million in gold bars. Well, we can't accept the gold bars from this new government. It was in like 1918. So what Guaranteed Trust does is they say ship it anyway. They use the San Francisco shipping country. They bring it in. Half of it's melted immediately and stamped like with the U.S. Treasury or with something else on it. And then they talk to the U.S. government, like pull their strings, and they eventually take it. And then once, that's it. Just one time, please. That's it. We're not going to do it again. And then they find out that they've been shipping Soviet gold to Sweden, to Holland. They're melting it down. They're stamping it. So they get their money, right? They're just cheating the system. And yeah, so I think that you guys got the idea. So these companies, these trusts, guarantee trusts, these banks, all these people, these pillars of what you think a capitalist society, they're not. This is the last thing I want to talk to. So guarantee trust, they're funding the communists, the Bolsheviks. Well, they also start a new group forms, United Americans to fight communism. Sole purpose to combat the teaching of socialists, communists, and Russians. And it has some capitalist backers, Guarantee Trust, Daniel Willard, another Otto Kahn of Kunlob, and American International. So they just split the groups. But this group, they keep writing all these stories about how the Bolsheviks are coming to America. They're going to start a revolution. They're going to overthrow the government. They're going to starve out New York City, all this stuff like that. And it's all just divert public attention from the fact that these businesses that are in America are supporting things that are not good for America. They're bad for their own country. So that's my show tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. To recap, down with the bankers, eat the rich. Capitalism, communism, socialism, libertarianism, it is all the same bird. These people, they control everything at the top, and they fund every single thing because they need you to fight so you won't look at them for what they're doing. And they are so evil. There is no good one. If they tell you to do something, do the opposite. I guarantee you it'll be a better decision than what they tell you to do. And they've been doing it forever. Just the names changed. Now it's Bezos and Gates. It used to be Rockefeller, Morgan, Harriman. They play both sides. They put us against each other. And even Guaranteed Trust, Siberia had a non-Bolshevik government. Guarantee Trust loans them $5 million so they can fight the Bolsheviks. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense. So again, I am pretty much like sold on the idea that it's not that they overthrew the monarchies and the church's power so they can institute republic governments or socialist governments where state controls everything, which they control the state and they are the only option. So again, don't join a group. I got like a few comments from Patriot Front on my last on my one tweet, like, don't join groups. They've infiltrated that. All you can do is control yourself. All you can do is look out for your friends, your family, develop relationships, have people over, join a church, read, see what they're doing, try and tell more people like this is how you leave the system. Just leave the system, right? So if you want to support the show, I hope you enjoyed it. You can find me on Twitter at Conspiracy or JC, on YouTube at Conspiracy or JC, Jack Allen. I got a website. You can support me there. But regardless, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope that cleared any questions you had up that are elites. There are no good ones. There are no good ones at all. If you're a billionaire,